They had no idea, absolutely no idea who they were dealing with when they tried to play you. When the narcissist believed they could twist your thoughts, drain your light, and toy with your emotions, they truly imagined their schemes were brilliant. They assumed you would remain confused, remain loyal, remain tangled in the intricate web they spun using charm, deceit, and empty promises. They believed you were too empathetic, too trusting, too forgiving to ever recognize the truth hidden behind their carefully crafted mask. But what they never realized is that with every lie they told, every moment they gaslit you, every attempt they made to distort your reality, they were exposing themselves more and more. Narcissists cannot grasp this simple truth. When you try to break someone who is sincere, someone who loves deeply, someone who gives without ulterior motives, you don't just wound them, you reveal your own hollowness. You expose the emptiness beneath your smile, the fractures in your illusion. In the beginning, they felt powerful. They believed they had you under control. They convinced themselves they had won because you doubted yourself, because you stayed silent, because you continually tried to repair the very things they kept destroying. But the thing about attempting to manipulate a good soul is very simple. You never walk away unharmed. You lose the very source you relied on. You ruin the only person who ever saw you as more than your ego. You survived their cycles. You endured the confusion. You navigated the emotional storms they created. Meanwhile, they remain trapped in the same draining patterns, constantly chasing the next person to exploit, seeking the next life to drain to feed their fragile ego. They expected you to stay down. They expected you to never recognize your worth. They mistook your patience for weakness and your kindness for blindness. But you were never blind, only hopeful. You were never weak, only caring. You were never theirs to command. You were simply giving them chances they never earned. And now they watch you rise, not with resentment, not with revenge, but with clarity, with resilience, with a peace they will never experience. You broke free while they stayed stuck exactly where they've always been, behind the mask they cannot function without. They see you rebuilding your life, growing, healing into someone they never imagined you could become, because their view of you was always restricted by their own ego. Narcissists cannot see beyond themselves. They only saw you as a resource, a supply, something to consume. But now they see what you always were: rare, deep, authentic, irreplaceable. They didn't just lose a person, they lost the only person who gave them genuine love, loyalty, and emotional depth that they will never encounter again. And what torments them now is this: they didn't try to manipulate an average person, they tried to manipulate you. And that is the very root of their downfall. The harm narcissists cause does not disappear when the moment ends. It echoes. It reshapes their own identity. At first, they deny the truth. They tell themselves that you were overly sensitive, that you demanded too much, that you never understood them. They create entire narratives to justify their actions. But these invented stories cannot last forever. Reality always returns, quietly, coldly, relentlessly. It whispers to them when they are alone, when the mask slips, when the room falls silent, and the truth hits hardest when they see you thriving, not in spite of them, but because you freed yourself from them. What narcissists never comprehend is that manipulation is a trade they cannot reverse. They exchanged your authenticity for their ego, your loyalty for their insecurity, your trust for their temporary sense of power, and in doing so, they cursed themselves with the very emptiness they projected onto you. You rebuild slowly but steadily. They unravel quietly and inevitably. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't try to expose them. You didn't stoop to their level. You allowed life to handle the justice. And life has an unforgiving way of balancing the scales. Everything they poured into the world, gaslighting, deception, emotional sabotage, returns to them steadily, systematically, without mercy. They end up living inside the very chaos they created. Their collapse is never loud in the beginning. Narcissistic decay begins in private. Their relationships crumble. People stop trusting them. The same patterns repeat again and again. They become strangers to themselves because you cannot build anything meaningful on a foundation made of ego, selfishness, and manipulation. And yes, they may smile in public, they may laugh louder than anyone else, but behind it there is a new emptiness, a shadow, a silent recognition. They know what they did, they know what they lost, and there is no path back to what they destroyed. That is the curse of narcissistic abuse. Once they lose someone with a genuine heart, someone who loved them with truth, they never truly recover. But you were not destroyed. You were transformed. You carry scars, yes, but they are symbols of your strength, your clarity, your awakening. You didn't retaliate. You elevated, and that rise is the punishment they never expected. Let them remain in the world they created. Let them drown in the silence that follows after losing someone who cared sincerely for them. Let them sit with the consequences of losing someone they never deserved in the first place. Because their manipulation wasn't just harmful, it was revealing. It revealed their true nature, and it confirmed who you were all along. And now, as you continue to grow with peace, with discipline, with unshakable self-worth, they watch from a distance they will never close. Narcissists always believe they can come back whenever they choose, but not this time, not with you. They never imagined that trying to control you would become the very thing that exposed them. But now they understand. When a narcissist manipulates someone genuine, they don't just harm that person. They destroy the last real connection their life will ever hold. They think it's just a moment, just a tactic, just something they can excuse later. But emotional abuse isn't one simple act. It is a fracture in their own identity. And that fracture spreads, poisoning everything they attempt to build. Because you cannot manipulate another human being without betraying yourself. The mind knows, the conscience knows. Even if they bury it beneath arrogance, beneath excuses, beneath artificial confidence, it lingers, it grows, it waits for the quiet moments when their mask falls. They told themselves you overreacted. They said you were too emotional, too intense, too giving. But those are lies narcissists create to run from the truth that they violated something sacred and they will never get it back. There is always a price, a heavy one. And narcissists never realized that while they thought they were breaking you, they were slowly dismantling themselves. Hurting someone who cared about them wasn't a victory. It was the beginning of their psychological collapse. Life only has meaning when it's rooted in honesty, humility, and responsibility. Narcissists reject all of that. They sacrifice integrity for ego, they sacrifice connection for control, and the chaos they create eventually turns inward and consumes them. They distract themselves with noise, with new people, with attention, with shallow validation. But at night, when everything grows quiet, reality returns. They remember your patience, your kindness, your loyalty. They remember how you cared when no one else did, how you gave what they didn't deserve, and then they remember what they gave in return. That kind of guilt does not sleep. It seeps into their new relationships. It poisons every attempt at connection because deep inside, They know exactly who they were with you and exactly what they are without you. They know they were capable of destroying the best thing they ever had, and that awareness erodes them slowly, softly, permanently. You healed, you grew, you confronted the wounds they caused, and you rose from them. But narcissists remain imprisoned by the behaviors they refuse to face. Their conscience won't release them. Their patterns won't allow them to grow. Their ego won't allow them to evolve. Something inside them died the moment they tried to dominate you. Something genuine, something human, something real, and no amount of validation or attention can resurrect what they lost in themselves. That is the ultimate cost of narcissistic abuse. It's not just about what they did to you, it's about what they destroyed within themselves. They fractured their character, they damaged their identity, they taught themselves that harming someone kind is acceptable. And once you teach yourself that, you lose every ability to create something meaningful. The deeper suffering now belongs to them. They know what they threw away. They know they chose ego over connection. They know they lost someone who truly cared. And no matter how they twist the story, no matter how many people they blame, the inner voice always whispers, "This was your doing. You lost them, and you will never have them again." Yes, you were hurt, you were wounded, but you healed with dignity. You rose with clarity. Meanwhile, they remain standing amid the ruins of their own behavior. They thought your kindness meant weakness. They thought your empathy meant submission. They thought your patience meant dependence. They misread everything. They mistook your silence for fear. They mistook your restraint for powerlessness. They believed you were too fragile to stand up, too naive to see what they were doing. But what they never understood and may never fully comprehend is that you weren't weak. You were strong in ways their ego could never grasp. Real strength doesn't scream. It doesn't need revenge or aggression. True strength, strength built on self-respect, discipline, and personal clarity, looks calm, steady, and unshaken. And that is exactly the strength you possessed. A strength that didn't rush to react, didn't fight for attention, didn't waste energy trying to fix what someone else kept breaking. You weren't silent because you were blind. You were silent because you were paying attention, evaluating, allowing their real character to reveal itself without interruption. When you finally walked away, when your silence became space, they didn't know how to respond. People who rely on control panic when their target detaches. They thrive on drama, on reactions, on emotional chaos, but you gave them nothing. And that nothingness was louder than any confrontation could ever be. They underestimated the power of your silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of clarity. The silence of someone who has seen the truth and decided to protect their soul. That silence is sharp, it is final, it is powerful. Anyone can shout in pain, anyone can lash out in anger, but it takes another level of strength to feel everything, the betrayal, the manipulation, the confusion, and still refuse to become bitter. And that was your choice, to rise instead of rage, to grow instead of crumble, to become better instead of broken. They thought they defeated you. They believed your quiet meant emptiness, that your patience meant weakness. But during that very silence, you were rebuilding, learning, expanding, transforming into someone they could never touch again. And now they see it. They see you thriving without them. They see you smiling without their approval. They see you living without their presence, and it shakes them. The version of you they thought they controlled no longer exists. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped proving your worth. You stopped hoping they would one day see what you offered, and now they sit with the consequences. Not because you punished them, but because life did. Life always reveals narcissists. Life always balances what they take for granted. Life always returns what they project. And now they feel the aftermath of what they lost. The realization that the person they tried to control was the strongest, most genuine presence in their life. They thought you were fragile, but you were unbreakable. They thought you were replaceable. Now they know you were irreplaceable. You never yelled. You never chased after them. Your silence, your distance, your grace, those became the loudest statements of all. You never wasted your strength on the wrong person. And now they finally see the truth. They cannot undo what they destroyed. They cannot reclaim what they abandoned. They will never again find the depth, the loyalty, the sincerity you carried. You never wanted games. You came with authenticity. You gave patience where they gave chaos. You gave love where they gave manipulation. You offered stability where they offered confusion. And they treated it like it meant nothing. But this wasn't just a simple loss for them. This was a soul-level loss. Because when a narcissist encounters someone who sees them at their darkest and still chooses to stay, someone who offers loyalty without conditions, and they walk away from that, what they lose is permanent. It doesn't disappear. It sits with them. It haunts them. It becomes a shadow in every quiet moment, a whisper reminding them of what they threw away. I let the best go. At the time, they convinced themselves they were choosing something better, something easier, something more thrilling or more convenient. But now everything feels empty. Every connection feels thin. Every new person feels unstable. Every distraction fades quickly, because once they have experienced depth, everything shallow feels suffocating. Now they search for your qualities in others. They chase reflections of you. They try to find in strangers what they lost in you, and they fail repeatedly, quietly, miserably. Maybe they pretend they've moved on, but deep inside, the comparison is constant. Nothing matches what they destroyed. They lost someone rare, someone real. You didn't just give them love. You gave them depth, understanding, steadiness. You held space for their storms. You carried their pain when they couldn't carry their own. You believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. And they treated that gift like it was disposable. That is the tragedy of narcissists. They do not realize the value of genuine care until it is gone. Now they are haunted not only by what they did, but by what they will never have again. Their loss didn't appear in the moment. It grows over time, slowly, painfully. The price of betraying someone with integrity is never paid immediately. It comes later, in the stillness, in the emptiness, in the longing that has no cure. You could have crumbled, but you didn't. You healed. You rose. You thrived. You rebuilt yourself piece by piece with dignity, with strength, with clarity. And that is the final truth they can never escape. They thought they could control you, silence you, break you, but they only revealed your strength. True power isn't loud. It is the quiet refusal to let anyone dim your soul. You were not broken by their cruelty. You were refined by it. Every step you take now, every moment of peace, every success, every healed breath is a reminder of what they lost. They live in emptiness while you live in freedom. They remain tangled in their own chaos while you walk with clarity. They exist with regret while you move with dignity. You survived, you healed, you thrived, and they will carry the weight of losing you for the rest of their lives.